It's Debbie Potts, and I'm back with a new guest today, Elyse Wagner, and we are talking about functional medicine coaching and mindset. So, if you're interested in taking ownership of your health and your aging process, you may want to listen to this episode. Are you recreating your current self to create your ideal future self? If not, maybe this episode will give you some ideas and motivation to get started today on creating your future self.
Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey, are you an aging athlete? Are you over 40 and struggling to get your desired results? I understand your frustrations. If you're like me, you're trying to get your running back or your cycling back or whatever sport you love to do, and you just can't figure out what's missing in your performance gains. How is your training and fueling program working for you? That's what I do. I personalize your nutrition and health program for you based on a bunch of different things. We collect data, collect clues from nutritional therapy assessment, from a food log with symptoms. Look at your genetics. If you've done something as DNA fit, look at blood chemistry panels. Let's look at functional lab tests as a Vibrant Wellness wheat zoomer to test if you have leaky gut and sensitivity to wheat, peptides in foods. Look at food sensitivity labs and Dutch tests. Look at your hormones. So we look at all these hidden internal sources of chronic stress that may be impacting your ability to burn fat, improve performance, and longevity. So if you want to talk about how we can personalize your fueling, training, and performance plan, let me know. Set up a discovery call. Head to my website, debbiepotts.net, and reach out. Set up a call and we can chat about how I can help you be the best version of yourself. So you can stop blaming the aging process and instead change your mindset that you're embracing the change, that we train differently in our 40s and up versus what you did when you're 20, 30-year-old. We need to adjust how we eat, when we eat, why and how, but also match our nutrition with our exercise program and add some more health building lifestyle habits into our day. I call this all the holistic method comprehensive coaching program, where I work on individualizing clients' nutrition, exercise, stress reduction, sleep, movement, time outside, digestion and gut health, hydration, and my favorite, happiness, play, and laughter. So if you want to know more how you can be your best self, live your best life, and perform your best, head to debbiepotts.net, schedule a discovery call with me, and we can get started on your new health building journey. You can be that amazing athlete and stop blaming the aging process. We have a new guest on the show today. Her name is Elyse Wagner. And I really wanted to share this conversation with you today as Elyse has a different background, and I love the combination of her education. She has a dual master's degree in nutrition and clinical health psychology. She has been diagnosed with autoimmune disease and really working hard to share her purpose, passion, and mission with other people. And I wanted her to share her story today with you. And we're going to talk about functional medicine, how we can improve the aging process. How does our mindset impact the way we live our life today? And how does that impact our future self? So let's dive into some different topics, and maybe you'll be more aware of things you do, the words you use, and how you live your life each day. So learn more about Elyse at Instagram on her handles called Functional Med Coach or Elyse Wagner. And I met her on LinkedIn. You can find her Elyse Wagner LinkedIn, as well as YouTube Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. So tune in if you want to figure out how you can live your best life, feel your best, move your best, and look your best as you age. All right. I have a new friend that I came across, thought we should have her on the show to give a different perspective, how we can be fit and healthy today and fit and healthy as our future self. So Elyse Wagner, thanks for coming on the podcast today to help us be our best selves.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and hopefully I'll leave with one or two new ideas to implement into your daily lives.
Yeah, we were just chatting. I think it's really important. My mission on this podcast lately has been how to recreate yourself now to improve your future self. So to create who you want to be when you are 80, 90 years old, because I think we're all aging up, and a lot of people are all talking about longevity and testing your VO2 and doing this type of training and this, that. But I really think it's talking about what other things we can do. It's mindset and, why we do the things we do. And are we doing too much of things? And just always asking why, what drives us. But really trying to improve the aging process. As I see my dad passed away last year. My mom's 82, and just seeing what's happening. So it's just inspiring me to go, okay, you guys wake up. We got to do something now to be kicking ass when we are older.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm right there along with you. We talked a little bit before we started recording here about just intuitiveness and really kind of leading ourselves from within. And I truly believe that each and every one of us here on the planet, we are here to feel and look our best. Mm-hmm. And yet so many of us are not feeling or looking our best, right? And it's no one's necessarily fault, right? And I'm not about like the shame or the blame game. We really need to take responsibility and ownership for our own health and well-being. And you're absolutely right. I 1,000,000% agree with you. It starts from within. Mm-hmm. And we've got to lead ourselves from within, to figure out where we want to go. And having a vision is really good to have a vision about, what do you see for yourself in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, not just tomorrow or right now.
And I think a lot of athletes that listen are high performer, type A, AAA personality that are just focused maybe on upcoming events or races or life activities that we don't always go, okay, how am I setting myself up for my future self? So I appreciate that. Let's back up and pause for a moment. What do you do and why do you do what you do?
What do I do? So I am the co-founder of what's called the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. We're an online school. We train health coaches. So a lot of people are very familiar with like a career coach, personal trainer, nutritionist. A health coach is kind of someone who can really encapsulate all aspects of well-being, from sleep, nutrition and food, exercise and movement, relationships, stress management. They have the tools, they have the education, but most importantly, they take a really different approach than a lot of the directors that we say in our life do, like the doctors or the nutritionists who tell us what to do and just kind of let us go and do it. The health coaches are really there to meet people where they're at, stand shoulder to shoulder with them, and really help them to step into their own well-being and help them take the next steps forward and guide them. So they're kind of like the guide on the side. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we do. We have a 12-month, 1 year long program where we train health coaches, and then they're eligible to go on and sit for the board exam. And why? I love the question of why. That's, oh my gosh. I ask that question quite a bit, and have been ever since I was a little girl, which is really where it all started. I was overweight and taunted as Obese Elyse in middle school when I was 13 years old. And instead of just allowing that, to define me and who I was, I actually turned inside of me and said, well, why do I look this way? Mm-hmm. And why do I feel this way? And intuitively, I just made this connection that certain foods in me just didn't agree. And that's where I had to start. So I went to my mom, who was really like my first health coach, to be honest, before there was such a thing. You know, and a 13-year-old, I don't know if you have kids, but if anyone's who's listening, you know, I mean, if your kid comes to you and they're like, I'm not happy, you're going to probably, your ears are going to perk up and you're going to lean forward and say, hey, what's going on here? Let's talk about this. And my mom did that with me. And I said, you know, I don't like how I look. I don't like how I feel. And I'm not supposed to look or feel this way. And I want to change. I want to change. Mm-hmm. So she really helped me and advocated with me. We found a holistic nutritionist. There was no registered dietitians at the time, knock on wood, thank God. And I'll tell you why in a second, who would see me. And the reason was more of like a liability issue, but I'm glad that I got connected with this holistic nutritionist who really at the time was taking a functional medicine approach. And for those of you who are new to the term functional medicine, it's really more of a philosophy. It's a way of thinking. It's the medicine of why. Actually, it's why are you presenting with these symptoms, not what are the symptoms, and why is this happening? And let's get to the root cause of it. And so when I met with this holistic nutritionist, we spent 2 hours together. She sat with me side by side, not across the table. And she asked me questions about all different areas of my life and what was going on with me from a biological, psychosocial, environmental level. And I think back in 2000, that's kind of a rarity. It was a rarity. And with her, you know, expertise in nutrition and my willingness, my readiness, you know, we know in the psychological space, right? The readiness, it was important. I was confident enough to move forward. We implemented a plan that we co-created, and it was really simple. We went from taking out all the processed foods. And I am definitely a product of the standard American, you know, diet growing up. We talk about Pringles and I don't know, Sara Lee, I don't know if that was like a West Coast thing or just Midwest, but, you know, the packaged frozen stuff. Mm-hmm. And we took all of that out and put in whole real foods. And we took out dairy and corn and a couple other inflammatory things. But the whole focus was on, let's take out the not so great things that are inflaming you. And let's put in other things that are going to nourish your body. And it was never about a diet or calorie counting or weighing in. It was about how do you feel from within. And within 2 months, I lost 50 pounds. It was like someone just put a pin in me and I just shrunk. And not only that, it was just like the weight slid off. That was one thing. My hair started to grow. I had a blemished face that started to clear up. My nails started growing. And I kind of had this huge aha moment, like, holy guacamole, food is medicine. And I wanted to share this with the entire world, right? And I was 13 years old. Like, who was going to listen to me? But I started learning. I started reading. In fact, I've got one of my oldest nutrition books. It's like hanging on by a thread in the corner over there.
Which book is it?
You know, it's this one over here. I'll show it to you all.
Oh, yes.
Sure, you all have
I know what that is.
Oh, yeah. It's literally
that is hanging by a thread.
But it's meaningful to me because it was like the very first nutrition book that I ever bought, and I read it.
I think mine too.
Yeah. And yeah, thanks for asking about that. And so long story short, it really set me on this experience, and this transformation set me on this trajectory. And as I was, I did this transformation within the 2 months between my 8th grade year and my freshman year of high school. So when I went back to high school, guess what? I thought, oh my gosh, everyone was going to be like, oh, Elyse, we've got to be friends with her now. She's going to be so cool, all of that. And you know what? That didn't happen. In fact, instead of being taunted as Obese Elyse, now I was getting ridiculed and made fun of because I was too thin. And, oh, are you bulimic? Do you have an eating disorder? What's going on with you? And I just, again, knew from within, like, I don't need to explain myself. I know what I did and I know the hard work I put in. But I also knew that there was more work to do, right? And I had a lot of mental, emotional stuff that I had to take care of that I did not have the coping skills to deal with, right? Well, fast forward, I did do my undergrad degree in nutritional sciences and dietetics. And I will say, I was not super happy with the education I was receiving, because I had now learned a lot and had my own personal journey and experience with whole real foods and more of a holistic nutritional space. And what I was learning in school was very much from the conventional, traditional food pyramid and paradigm. And it was all from a disease space, not from a well-being space. So we were working at the other end of the spectrum here. And I was like, this is not health and well-being. And health is not just about food or nutrition. There's so many different aspects to it. So at that point, I started to get really curious, because, we have all of this information at our fingertips now more than ever, right? With our phones. And I always wondered, like, we have this information out here to get better, to feel better, to be our healthiest, but why aren't we necessarily making those changes? And so I got into the psychology of things, and we were talking, I was studying at Bastyr University, getting a dual master's in holistic nutrition and clinical health psychology, became a licensed therapist and certified nutritionist. And while I was in grad school, I got really sick and no one could figure out what was going on with me. I probably saw 10 different providers and everyone had the same thing, like, oh, blood work looks good, not sure what it is. And I just was getting sicker and sicker, and I refused to not have an answer. So I kept digging for the why and the root cause. And I finally found a functional medicine doctor who literally looked at all my labs. He looked at me up and down and he said, you have celiac disease. We're going to get you genetically tested for an autoimmune disorder. Sure enough, I have, came back positive, and then had to make this entire lifestyle shift and change. And to be really honest, even though I went to this holistic medical school for training and nutrition, that wasn't really a whole part of it. That was a whole rabbit hole I had to dig down, the whole gluten-free and doing that in a very whole foods, healthy way. Right. And I just remember being in my kitchen thinking to myself, golly, we don't have to struggle like this alone. And if I'm struggling, I can't even imagine who else is struggling. And I don't want people to struggle like this. We don't have to do it. So I just kind of made this commitment. Like, once I heal myself with whole real foods, a positive attitude, functional medicine, I want to provide this opportunity for other people to take ownership of their health and well-being. And that's why I started FMCA with Dr. Sandy Scheinbaum, who's my co-founder and our CEO. So she's got a clinical psychology background as well. And anyways, we're both extremely passionate, if you can't tell, about leading this charge and helping people really take ownership. And there's health coaches who can support you with that. And I know you're a health coach too, so you get it.
Yeah. Well, you said so many things that I say the same thing all the time, meet the client where they're at and find kind of what's your why, and really focusing on that positive attitude, positive mindset. And I flashback in a senior year of high school and then into college, I did lose a lot of weight, saw a dietitian, was writing down my food log. And I've actually never shared this with everyone, but I would do that. And I got obsessive about it. And same thing, you think everyone's going to think, oh, because I'm taller. Guys never asked me to prom. And, you do all that stuff in high school, think, oh, I'll lose weight. But then I lost too much weight. And then same thing, you think, everything's going to be different. And then it just leads to all these other things going, okay, what's the why? What's why? But that's funny. I think that's why everyone has their own story, why they got into functional medicine or functional coaching, health coaching, looking at the whole picture, because same as myself, I had my adrenal exhaustion in 2013 and spent years trying to find someone to help me. And I just ended up becoming the person I wanted help from. And so I had to keep educating myself because, no one's understanding me from endurance athlete, high performer, mindset as an athlete, and how I can actually heal and repair myself instead of just give me the supplements and come back, exercise less, get some sleep, do this, do that. And then see in 6 months, I need someone to hold my hand to get started to really, what should I do differently? And how should I do that? And finding your best self sometimes takes a little longer, but it's finding the right people that will help guide you down that path with you. It's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say there's no I in wellness, I think it's meant to be a team sport. And we're meant to have some support along the way and someone to see, our blind spots or, perhaps provide a safe space so that we can kind of noodle, and I call it wonder storming, kind of think about some different ways and approaches, to our life. And it's nice to have that someone to bounce ideas off of, especially if they've been through it before, and can share their perspective too.
And I just had a coaching call with a client yesterday, and it was just, she's like, it's so stupid. It's so simple, but you just need someone else to say it. You need to just maximize your sleep quality and get to bed earlier. And let's figure out why you're not going to bed and like go backwards. But it's so funny that like, wow, how did I not figure that out on myself? Sometimes you just need to hear from someone else and talk about it.
You're right though. And I personally think that we really have never been taught how to think like that. We're not really taught about personal care or we talk about self-care now. Everyone kind of talks about that, but a lot of people think of self-care as like the manicures and champagne or massages, but self-care is, really about like saying no to the TV show and going to bed, at that specific time, or like setting up your bedtime routine or whatever you're going to do, to make sure that you're getting the high quality sleep. Right. Or, I don't think we've necessarily been taught or have, had the role models per se along the way to show us really what that looks like to think, in a way of well-being, if that makes sense.
I think it's helpful that we've had recently, last couple of years, influencers as Dr. Andrew Huberman doing the Huberman Lab podcast, giving people toolkit. Because I saw him on Today's Show on the news the other day. I had it on. I'm like, oh my God, Huberman's on TV to show that podcasts have been launching out around the world, making such an impact that Huberman's on Today's Show talking about sleep hacks. That was pretty huge moment, I think, for how people need this information, just simple, free tools to help. Oh, this is all I need to do that are free to help optimize my sleep, and why, or how alcohol kind of impacts everything. So it's just amazing how we can finally maybe getting big influencers out there impacting the world to help bring light to, all right, there's a need for this holistic approach. So with that, what is the functional medicine style that you guys talk about? Is that kind of what you're saying? Just work on the sleep and stress and movement? And what do you say?
Yeah. So, functional medicine is really like, it's a philosophy. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of being. It is evidence-based, and it's also systems-based. So it's really about looking at the whole, right? And the whole approach, the whole person, how everything is really interconnected. The body is interconnected. We're not just a heart or a brain. We've got this whole system that speaks and connects to each other. And the functional medicine coach approach is really bringing these two fields of functional medicine. So the medicine of why and positive psychology. So I'll go to the conventional psychology. Conventional psychology is really focused on what's wrong with you. And positive psychology focuses on, well, what's going well with you? Mm-hmm. And we take it a little bit further and we talk about, what are your strengths? Mm-hmm. We all have inherent strengths within us, right? And one of my top strengths is curiosity, right? Asking why. Another one is creativity. And so we bring that into the fold and really marry these two fields together. And a functional medicine health coach, I always like to say that their sandbox, if you will, where they can play in, is in the lifestyle behavior change, these modifiable lifestyle factors. So things like sleep, food and nutrition, exercise and movement, stress, relationships, even the mental, emotional, spiritual side of things. A health coach can really come in, meet that person where they're at. So take like a client-centered approach and understand their readiness to change, right? So if a doctor were to say to a client, give them a whole long list of things that they need to change in their lifestyle. You need to be doing this with your sleep, this with your exercise, stop eating this. I mean, if you've never experienced that from a doctor, I have. I think it sounds like you might have as well. It can be very overwhelming. How do you make all these changes? Mm-hmm. And the health coach can really help the client unpack that in a calm way, not overstressing the body even more, and creating a plan of how can you move forward and celebrating those wins, helping that person gain some confidence, and ultimately really allowing them to hold their health in their own hands, which is the ultimate goal, is that the health coach isn't supposed to be there for years and years and years. I mean, if that's the case, that's wonderful and great. Hopefully they've got a nice relationship, but at the end of the day, it's like, let's really teach people how to handle their health and well-being and what that looks like for them. So
what do you find with people to figure out where to start so it's not overwhelming? Because I think a lot of people, as I said before, that are the type A overachievers, it's if they're the perfectionist and if they don't nail everything right, they're out, they're done. They're just like, this isn't working for me. So if, you have to work on sleep, we got to manage stress, we got to change up your workouts, we got to figure out what to eat, when and why and where and how, and so much to work on in a holistic approach, but prioritizing, meeting the client where they're at, where to start picking one thing. But how do you get people out of the mindset that, okay, you don't have to be perfect at everything. Let's start with one thing, master that, and move on.
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. And so everyone, who's a coach might have a little tiny bit of a different approach to it, right? But we really are coming from the coach approach, which is meeting that person where they're at and kind of just asking them and saying, I see you. I hear you. I get that you want to, do all of these things at once, right? And if it were me coaching that person, I would say, listen, that's me. I'm a perfectionist. And I have to deal with my own stuff, right? And I also encourage people to try to lean into not this black or white, I call it like zebra thinking, but more of just like, let's lean into the gray. Like, how can we just lean towards what you want to do? What can that look like? And really, I like to pass the ball over to, the client and encourage people to, where I've heard all these things that you'd like to begin with, but what do you think? Where are you the most ready? What is the most important to you? Because some people might come in and they're like, oh yeah, I want to change the food. We've got to change the food. But as you start to ask some open-ended questions and really allow that person to step into the conversation, they might start to unfold and unpack some other things that are really going on that they kind of have this insight or aha moment of like, well, actually, if I wasn't that stressed at work, or if I didn't have this like overwhelming, feeling every single day when I go to work, because I'm so stressed about X, Y, or Z, or my relationship, I probably wouldn't eat the whole bag of cookies or whatever it is. So maybe we need to actually start with the stress piece of it or the relationship piece. And so it's a little bit of kind of holding this safe, non-judgmental space and really asking the question of like, where would you truly like to get started? If we could just pick one or two, things to work on and get started. Because oftentimes what I have seen, and I think what a lot of our coaches have seen too, is you start working in one area and then you start to see a lot of different areas, shift and unfold. It's almost like this really cool ripple effect, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be my encouragement. And that's typically the coach approach and what we teach as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think two things I find a lot of athletes, they are running out. I did a podcast on this years ago. What are you running to? What are you running from? Because people just race, sign up for a race, get done. They're doing another one. They're just all the time racing and they've done it for years. And I always want to know, as I ask everything, why? What's going on inside your head that makes you want to keep doing Ironman when you've done 15 of them? And, what's the point? It costs so much money. It's time, don't you want to do other things or go every other year? It's just always the why. So I think it's, looking at, as you're saying, I was thinking of the onion, peeling the layers off, getting to the root cause. What's going on in your head makes you want to do that. So just like figuring out why people are overtraining and overracing and always having to do something. It's like, what are you scared of? What else is going on?
It's so interesting as you're saying that. And the way I think about it, so it's kind of like a mindset map, if you want to think of, we're so typically as a society focused on the end results, right? Mm-hmm. And the result is kind of at this end of the spectrum. And as we start to reverse engineer it and we go upstream, right? And we go to the root cause, we go from the results, typically there's an action, right? Behavior. And what precedes that is thoughts and feelings. What precedes that is typically belief systems. And that's usually where we stop is the belief, right? What's the belief that's going on? And I encourage people to go one step deeper and further. What's the value? What are the values that you're truly living from? Most people don't always know how to define the top, 3 to 5 values that are really leading their life and really leading every single thing that stems from those values, the beliefs, the actions, the feelings, the end results. And so when we go upstream and have conversations about that, like, you talk about the why, and help me understand that a little bit more. And tend to uncover some of the values, and then even ask people, what is this something that you truly even, is important to you or you care about, or tell me why this is important to you. And I think those deep conversations can often be really enlightening to a lot of individuals to help them understand some of their behaviors, why they do this. Because a lot of people, I think, it's true, just in our modern society, we're running a little bit on autopilot and doing things because
that's how I've always done it.
Yeah, exactly. I think we need to start, like you said at the beginning, waking up a little bit. Why are we doing this? And what's really the motivating factor here?
Yeah. And I always say, looking at what's your purpose, what's your why, and what's your mission, and figuring out, okay, am I getting results on what I'm doing now? My fueling and nutrition lifestyle supplement plan, is it actually working for me and getting the results I want? Because a lot of people, you said, are on autopilot. They're doing all these right things they hear about, but they're still struggling with weight gain, unexplained weight gain, or not inability to lose weight. And they're feeling fatigue, and they're struggling with sleep and depression, anxiety, irritability, all the mood changes, and then gut health. And it's really challenging to get people to realize that's not normal. You don't have to accept that as your normal self. That's what's happening as you get older. This is just how it is. And that's where it comes back to what you say, and I always say as well, is take ownership of your health. And let's realize that we can figure out how to take a different approach to get results that you're looking for, and not settle for this, because it is so bio-individual.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no one size fits all approach to health and well-being. And I think it's really common to look and see what everyone else is doing outside of us. And really, we need to start disconnecting. And I always say it's like turning down the outside noise and turning up our internal volume.
Yeah.
And really saying, like, what's working for me? What do I really want to do? And is this even working? And taking a very personalized approach, because every single person's different. Lifestyle is different. Biochemistry is different, life stage as well. So there's a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, I know. Seasons. Everything keeps changing, but people keep doing the same thing and wonder, okay, why am I struggling? Or maybe they just don't even realize they're struggling, that they're like settling for being where they are, and not go, I'm not living my best life. I'm being my best self. I could do different. They don't even maybe realize it. But I think a challenge is a lot of people in our space are addicted to devices. I've got my Oura ring on, I took my Garmin watch off, but people have the Whoop and the Oura and the watch and the NutriSense, and they've got so much data that is just information overload. And then they get all this information from their workouts and then their nutrition, and they're logging everything. And I think sometimes it is so overwhelming. You're just making yourself more stressed. And we're about managing those external stressors and identifying those hidden internal stressors with functional lab tests. But I think so much of it can, starting place is, let's figure out more intuitive healing intuitive fueling and training and start to pay attention to, oh, how do I feel? Do I need to depend on all this information? Oh, I'm going to have a bad day. Or said I had readiness scale of blah, blah, blah. I'm in the red and my HRV dropped, blah, blah, blah. And not just go, okay, let's check in, take a pause, reflect on, all right, take inventory. Where am I today? How do I feel? Instead of depending on all this information we get sucked into in this technology world we're in.
It's so interesting that you bring that up because I have a really similar mindset around that. And I don't really wear anything, right? So I did actually have a continuous glucose monitor on a couple months ago for a few weeks. And it was the intention around that to wear that was really as just an experience and an experiment. I wanted to kind of see what was going on inside, and I wanted to do some experiments with myself, right? And at the end of the day, I was checking with myself, and I kind of monitored like how often I checked my phone, right? And it beeps at you and it does these things. And in the middle of the night, my blood glucose dropped and it sounded an alarm, and that stressed me out. So I wasn't getting good sleep. And I said, enough is enough, because this is not actually serving me any longer. It was really cool to know some good information, but I'm taking this out now, right? And so for me and my personality, I know that like all this data actually puts me back into a really old mindset and framework of that perfectionistic, like, oh my God, I'm not perfect. I'm not here. I'm not there. So like what I did was wrong and now I'm bad. And it's like this whole emotional downward spiral. And ultimately that just doesn't serve me, where what I'm aspiring to do is to actually create healthy relationships between myself and food, myself and movement, joyful movement, right? And so I don't want to look at things as a punishment or good or bad or wrong. I think the information once in a while to kind of get a baseline and see where you're at, that's wonderful, and then you can kind of get into a groove of things and see. But yes, I do agree. I think we're in this world where we've got this, I call it infobesity. I mean, we've got so much information. What are we actually doing with it? And how, if you do have all this information, it can be helpful to have a guide to kind of provide some clarity, and help you just create some sense around it, and movement forward that works, for you. So yeah, that's kind of my stance on it too. And I want to enjoy, there are some foods that I just want to sit and enjoy. And, I know that's probably going to make my blood glucose rise a ton. And at the same time, I'm going to go take a nice leisurely walk afterwards and all of that. So
it's not to make yourself feel bad about who you are, what you're doing. And if you're not doing everything perfect, and then you'll be, you get stressed out. Like, okay, I'm failing at this. This is not serving me well anymore. It's not making me feel good. So it brings me to the other comment. We're talking about intuition and intuitive eating, and how do you work with nutrition? Because I hate the labeling of food categories. You just eat real food that makes you feel good and energized and satisfied and doesn't give you cravings. So what is your thought on nutrition and even exercise with that, but just nutrition and fueling your body to energize, nourish your body and your cells? But if there's an intuitive side, or what's your stance on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole, we could talk about this for hours and days, and I might be bringing a really different, thought process to the table here. And so my background isn't just nutrition, it's nutrition and psychology. And it's really, bringing in the whole person. And you talk about like, you wanted to be that coach that, you never necessarily had. And same thing with me is like, I wanted to be, even though I had a great nutritionist growing up, I also wanted to bring in a space. I saw some different dietitians and nutritionists along the way as well, who had a very judgmental, aspect to them, even psychologists that I would see, and I just didn't appreciate that. And I thought, Well, who the heck wants to go and see someone who's going to be judging them and shaming them for their food? And so my approach has always been very non-judgmental. Again, this coach approach, meeting people where they're at. And so I think the best way that I look at food, I do believe, and this might sound wild to some people. Okay. So just take it, as it comes to you. But I do believe, I had a professor in college and graduate school say to me, that sheet cake that you might get at the local grocery store, do you think that has any nutrition to it? And my first response was like, no, oh my God, that's awful. It's filled with chemicals and dyes and sugar and flour and blah, blah, blah. And she provided a really unique perspective. And she said, well, what about if this cake is nourishing a relationship? What if it's for a celebration? What if, and so it really, when I was in school, molding and kind of folding these two fields together of nutrition psychology, I think there is a huge field of nutrition that just solely focuses on the food and the nutrients, and the macros and the micros and the calories and this and that. And when we focus just solely on that, we are missing so much more of what food really brings to the table. Food is information. Food is love. Food is medicine. Food can also hinder our health and not serve us, right? I was at a huge conference a couple of weeks ago, and there's a whole panel of a couple different providers and functional medicine doctors talking about, the question was posed, like, what is like one universal food that's good for everyone? And I love the response of what one doctor said. And he said, there's no one food that's good for everyone because of this bio individuality, right? And so like an avocado, for someone who has an histamine intolerance, that food is going to send them into a mast cell response, right? Mm-hmm. For someone who's got like an issue with pineapple, let's say, or, oxalates, et cetera, that's going to be an issue, right? Having kale or spinach, et cetera. And so when we look at healthy foods, I think we need to expand, I think, our language around that, and what's really healthy for us is going to be different for someone else. And so I look at food as a whole and kind of on a continuum. There's food that is whole, real food. There's food that's processed food, right? And at some level, it still provides nourishment because every food has some sort of a nutrition basis in it, right? But it also, food can be nourishing, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Mm-hmm. And I think we don't always take into account those other aspects, right? And so like example, I don't know, you're visiting with your mom, right? And it's her birthday and she prepared this, really fun little cupcake and it's got really beautiful icing on it. And, do you eat it? Do you not eat it? Right? How is it made? You could really make yourself crazy and stressed out about all of this. Or you could kind of just say, okay, I'm celebrating my mom's birthday. I'm going to mindfully enjoy this cupcake. Maybe I'll have all of it. Maybe I'll just have a bite of it. And so that's kind of how I think about food and nutrition, which might be a little bit different for some people, mm-hmm. But it's really encompassing this whole thing. And again, not making anyone right or wrong about it. I had a client, I'll just share this last story. And then, I had a client I was working with one time. He was at a stoplight and he texted me and he said, Elyse, I'm at this stoplight and to the right is McDonald's and to the left is this grocery store. What do I do? And again, my whole basis is like, I want to put health in your hands. You are the CEO of your health. You make the decision. So I didn't say that to him, but what I said was, okay, we were joking. I said, listen, either way you choose, it'll be fast food, right? You could go through fast food, McDonald's, or you could go into this grocery store and get some walnuts and some blueberries, right? That's fast food too, right? And so I said, but how do you want to feel in the next, 20 minutes from now? How do you want to feel? He said, I want to feel energized. I want to feel light and I want to feel focused. And I said, okay. And so within 20 minutes, I got a text back with a screenshot of blueberries and walnuts, but the point there is that he made the choice, right? Yes, exactly. He had already done some work with his goals and everything and his vision. And it's in those points, those present moments, those nexus points where you can have that person like a coach to support you, to reach out to and say, oh yeah, I can feel like I'm slipping back into some old ways. I need a little bit of some support or some encouragement here. Or just like a little mini reminder and nudge to, do what is going to work best for you. But again, there's no shame or blame in it. And even if he did choose the McDonald's, I don't need to do any more. I don't need to do any of the shaming or blaming. His body is going to tell him like, hey, that food just messed me up. I don't need, that was not a good choice, for me. So, does that help to kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I think it's teaching people how to take ownership of their own health. Go, okay, it's like a kid teaching them, all right, if you eat that bag of Halloween candy, what's going to happen tomorrow when you wake up for school? Just teach them the lessons at any age that you have to start paying attention and correlating your emotions, your mood, your brain fog, memory, your gas, bloating, whatever the symptoms might be because of the connection of certain foods that you eat, and realize, okay, because that's like with me, if I have a cupcake, I'll get a headache in 5 seconds, and I'm kind of non-celiac, gluten sensitive. So I cannot, I've seen my results. I can't do wheat. So I know if I have that food, that's like a scone. I hate muffins, but if it's a homemade yummy scone that I know that that's going to impact my brain health. And that scares me for my future self, that I'm going to have Alzheimer's, dementia, because it hurts my head. So that's incentive. So I have to take ownership. Like if I eat that, I'm going to have a headache, and that just means my future self is going to be more damaged. So I take responsibility for that now.
Yeah. And what would you say is like your value that's leading you?
Yeah. Well, I just always think of, if I have a headache in 5 seconds from eating this, what's my future look like? I just don't want to be, I'm just all, after watching what happened to my dad in the hospital and how our medical system works, how crappy this food is and everything. I just think, okay, whatever I can do now at age 50 for my future self is I'm all about it. So it's figuring that out. I can't afford to eat that food, even if it will taste good for a moment, but long-term is going to really damage me. So I don't want it.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. I want to just acknowledge, like, it takes a lot of discipline. I call it the other vitamin D. Discipline and consistency to show up that way and to say, like, I know what's going to happen to me. I'm choosing from a space of just like loving myself and nourishment in my body, that I'm not going to eat that just because it really isn't going to serve me. And I like to use those kind of words too. Even the language, I feel like, carries energy around it. When we start to say like good or bad or right or wrong, it really kind of is limiting to us. But when we use different language and we say, that just doesn't really serve me, doesn't make me feel good, I'm choosing, not to put that in my body today. And it comes from more of a space of a growth, mindset and empowerment instead of disempowerment and putting anything or anyone down. So I found that even changing the language is very helpful as well.
I think it's a super important point to work on that, because I know so many people in the low carb space, and a lot of people that I go to conferences with, they speak of eating disorders. And if they have any sugars, carbs, it will set them off to binge and be in this roller coaster, eat. So it's easier to avoid them, but it's more looking at a different perspective. Instead of not eating them and set up these strict guidelines, maybe understand what happens if I have that and get the psychological part, rather than I'm doing a strict carnivore or the BBB and E, only bacon, eggs, and beef and sardines, whatever. The challenge Dr. Ken Berrios talks about for 30 days or 6 weeks set. I always wonder, are you working on why you can't eat those other foods? What's your why again? What's your relationship with food that you can't just have one, you can't stop? So maybe doing a food elimination diet is beneficial short-term, but if it's not working, that's the psychology part of it. I think a lot of people need to address, or the athletes that are listening, they just think they can out exercise a bad diet. And as I always say, can't out supplement poor lifestyle habits. You have to eventually work on all those factors, as I call the holistic method. But I think it's an important part that is, again, we're talking the root cause and the why of everything to really figure out deeper down what's going on.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think when people can connect with that, it gives them a space of knowing, and then also, again, that empowerment to decide what's going to be best for them and making that choice. Like my daughter, she has celiac as well. And, there's a lot of things that she can't have already, right? With the candy that just happened with Halloween, it was like we had a whole conversation about it. And I like to have some swaps that she can have. And, but we make it a point in our household to always turn over, if we do have like boxed items, read the ingredients and understand like what it actually is that we're putting in our body, and giving her the choice as well, things that are gluten-free, to say like, do you want to try this? Let's see how see how it does feel in your body. And she's pretty in tune with her body, where she'll say, "Oh, mommy, that's really sweet." Mm-hmm. She doesn't like it. It's not something she's used to, because we do a lot of whole real foods at the house. So when she does have something that's like a processed, like a Yum Earth, I'm sure you've heard of that brand. Mm-hmm. It's like an organic sucker, right? It's still sugar, even though it's organic. But to her, it's very sweet. And so I've actually been super impressed with a 6-year-old who can kind of self-regulate her and be like, whoa, that's too much sugar. I'm just going to have or that's enough. I don't need to eat the whole thing. I can just have a bite or two. Mm-hmm. And I think it's empowering for us as adults, and whether we have kids or grandkids, to be able to support them in learning some of those skills, and get in touch with their hunger, their fullness signals, what their body actually is really wanting or needing. Because our body absolutely speaks to us. It just does it in a different way than how we're used to talking. And so if we do turn down, again, that outside noise and turn up the internal volume, our body's going to tell us what it needs.
Yeah. So innate intelligence. And so that's a great way to close up the show today, because I think what you're just saying about your daughter, who's 6, you said? 6 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That doesn't matter how old you are. You should still be working on that, because I know most adults don't know how to do that. And that's what they struggle with, or don't pay attention, and even know that they don't have the ability to pay attention to, how does that make me feel? And that's what in nutritional therapy and FDN practitioners, we've done the metabolic typing diet, that I use their diet check record. Every time you eat, like, how does this make me feel? And track all that in our nutritional therapy food and mood log. And track all that. And everyone I give, because I give all my clients that food and mood log, they leave it empty. And I'm like, no, I want to know how that food made you feel. That's the whole point of this, not just what you ate. That's fine. I want to know how that food made you feel, and how that connects to your energy, your productivity, your workout performance. And look at that, not just, I ate this meal at this time of day. It's like, we need to look at the whole picture.
Yes. Yeah. And people need help. I would, one of the favorite, when I would see clients, we would go have a meal together, because people are not used to that. Right. And they were all certainly did not want a therapist and a nutritionist looking at their food and psychoanalyzing, which I was not doing or judging, by the way, but it was more so that they could learn about their own body and, understanding how they were responding and reacting as well. So, yeah.
Good. Well, where can people find you? You're on YouTube, LinkedIn, social media. Where's your spot you hang out?
Yeah, come find me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Elyse_Wagner. That's Instagram, and at Functional Med Coach or functionalmedicinecoaching.org. And happy to support you, answer any kind of questions that you might have, and come find me. I love to connect with new people. So thank you. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, great talk. Hopefully people pick some new thoughts up and want to experiment a little bit more, maybe taking off all your data and just actually listen to your body. Take off your Oura ring and your Whoop and don't wear your heart rate monitor when you work out, and just go.
I'm going to write a post about that. That was a good insight that I had today. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up.
You can tag me. I'll share it.
Yeah, I will.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Hey, my fellow aging endurance athletes, just a reminder, if you like what you listened to today, make sure to share this episode with your community. Head to debbiepotts.net to set up a free discovery call to learn more about my personalized coaching programs, especially if you are on a mission as myself to improve the aging process and start training to be my best self when I am 80, 90 years old. So I am on a mission to live my best life and be my best self the second half of my life. So if you're on the same mission as me, head over to my website and YouTube channel to learn more ways to improve the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.